Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. The new college football AP Top 25 poll is out after a massive week 9 of the season. As expected, though, not a ton of changes at the top. You see here, Oregon remains your #1 team in the nation, followed by Georgia and Penn State. Ohio State had a close call against Nebraska. They stay at 4. However, Miami's dominant win over a struggling FSU team moved the needle a bit for them. They jump. Texas A&M takes the biggest jump, making it into the top 10, jumping up 4 spots with their huge win behind quarterback Marcel Reed, who took over for a benched Connor Wegman. Notre Dame also moves up 4 slots to 8, Fighting Irish back in the top 10. And hey there, BYU, we see you, undefeated still, making their way up the rankings. Let's show you a look now at 11 through 20. After LSU's brutal loss to the Aggies, they fall the most here at 16, as they are now 6-2 on the season. SMU works its way into the top 20 with their win over Duke. And a look at the rest of the teams that now round out the new AP Top 25 poll. From our service academies, you see Army still there, undefeated. They did have a bye week this week, but due to other teams' results, they move up a few spots here. And despite losses for both Illinois and Missouri, they remain in the top 25, rounding out those final 2 spots, both 6-2 on the season. We're going to dive into all of this and so much more as we welcome you to CBS Sports HQ. I am Jordan Giorgio. Joining me from afar, Emory Hunt and Brad Crawford. Guys, let's begin with the thriller that was at Kyle Field last night. It was looking like all LSU until A&M made a switch to quarterback Marcel Reed after benching Connor Wegman. And it paid off. How about that? Resulting in 3 straight scoring drives. The old saying goes, if you have 2 quarterbacks, Emory, you have none. But is that really the case for this Aggie team?
Therein lies the real question, Jordan. The true question should be, why is he not starting?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, that should be the question, because he enhances your run game, which has been dominant all season long, and it just makes you tougher to defend, and it opens up those deep passes that we saw him connect on against LSU. The defense, you saw them get energized and get a little bit more nasty when they saw the run game pop it off on the offensive side of football. So therefore, we got complimentary football from Texas A&M. Now, moving forward, how can they expand the passing game for Reed and everything, and see how that goes moving forward? Because right now, if you put Connor Wegman back on that field, you may see a mutiny out there in Kyle Field. So I think A&M found something with this young quarterback, but can they expand the passing game moving forward?
Now, Brad, after what unfolded last night, do you think that this A&M team, maybe with Marcel Reed moving forward, who knows, could be the second SEC team in the college football playoff? What do you think?
I think it's certainly possible, but I'm not going to project 3 interceptions from the opposition every week the rest of the way. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier handed this game to Texas A&M. Mike Elko wasn't calling a crazy game offensively with Colin Klein there, the OC in College Station. Nussmeier gave him 3 picks in the second half, and LSU refused to run the football with the lead. Kind of surprising, because Nussmeier was sort of a dark horse Heisman candidate had LSU won that game last night and then won out. But LSU still very much in the playoff picture, but A&M, Jordan, surprisingly, entering November, is the SEC's lone unbeaten in conference play. And you got to give your hats off to Mike Elko for making that change at quarterback, putting in freshman Marcel Reed.
All right, Brad, so Emory is still riding this Nuss bus. Or, I mean, Emory, Brad is riding this Nuss bus still, I guess. We'll see what happens. But, guys, let's go ahead and head to Tuscaloosa now, where many Bama fans were just holding their breath after suffering a loss to not only Vandy, as we know, but also their rival last week in Tennessee. They responded with a 34-0 win over Missouri, eliminating the Tigers from playoff contention. Right now, Bama really controls their own destiny. But how confident are you, Emory, right now that Kalen DeBoer can lead this team, who has looked shaky and undisciplined at times, to the college football playoff?
Very skeptical because of how the rest of the field has played out. I think this 2-loss Alabama team has put themselves on thin ice, so they have little room for error. So not because of Kalen DeBoer and because of what they've done so far this season, but because everyone around them in other conferences has gotten significantly better and has a better resume in terms of, hey, they just keep winning. I can't justify putting a 2 or 3-loss SEC team in over an undefeated team from a different conference based on how they've played. So for me, Alabama can finish out the season really good. They could be a spoiler, but when you have an A&M that's playing really well, you have Tennessee that's playing really well, and Texas looks like they can rebound. I think all 3 of those teams can usurp Alabama and in some cases usurp Georgia.
Yeah, Alabama still has national brand recognition, and that matters to the selection committee. You're not going to hear that on the record, but it certainly does. We all knew that if you got to double-digit wins in the SEC this season, chances were high you were going to be one of those 7 at-large selections. And I still think Alabama, if the Crimson Tide went out, are going to be in the playoff. Now, I'm like Emory. I'm very skeptical of that because the Crimson Tide still are not running the football effectively. Dalen Milroe played pretty well against Missouri, but Alabama benefited from Brady Cook being injured there, the starting quarterback for the Tigers. Drew Pine, 3 interceptions in Tuscaloosa. So Bama's road to a playoff berth is certainly back against the wall type scenario. And 2 weeks from now, that game in Baton Rouge is an elimination game for LSU and Bama.
Yeah, we'll see if they can go ahead and win out then, Brad, as their quest to the college football playoff continues next week in Baton Rouge against LSU. Let's move on here. Out in Autzen, Oregon answered any questions really that we had on if they deserve to be the #1 team in the nation, dominating against Illinois. We have to see, of course, how this whole playoff shakes out. But Brad, can Oregon book their trip to the national championship already?
If they can score on 5 of 6 first-half possessions in every game the rest of the season, I mean, Oregon is without a doubt the #1 seed in this playoff bracket and probably the overwhelming front runner. I will say that Georgia right now is still, I think, the elite team to beat, so to speak. But Oregon is, 7-0 for a reason. They beat a very good Illinois team and beat them. Took them behind the woodshed. 35-3 at halftime. You see some of the highlights there. Dylan Gabriel has inserted himself right in the middle of that Heisman picture. And in the Big Ten, I did not think we'd be saying this going into November, but Ohio State is not the best team in that conference. It's Oregon. They've beaten Ohio State head-to-head. And really, since early September, Oregon has looked apart with several blowouts the last couple games.
If we're talking about the teams that are potentially going to be in the postseason, let's say the top 12 or whatnot, rank them by which quarterbacks you trust in big game situations and high pressure situations, and tell me where you would rank Carson Beck juxtaposed to Dylan Gabriel. Right now, you have to put Dylan Gabriel at the top based on what he has done out there on the field in these high leverage situations. We saw him come back against Ohio State. We've seen him come back early in the year when they were down and looked like they were going to be upset earlier in the calendar. And we've seen him play well and elevate his game moving forward. So we are now talking about teams that have built up that callus of, man, we worked through some adversity and we've come out on the other side. Man, we go into every game expecting to win no matter what the outcome looks like start the game. So you got to have so much belief in Dylan Gabriel, how they're running the football, #1 that carries over late into the season, and how defensively they're finding plays to make and being opportunistic.
Yeah, Gabriel, you guys, now 2nd all-time in passing touchdowns in NCAA history. It's been so fun to watch him throughout this season. All right, now, Brad, before we hit a quick break, you released your projected bracket for the top 12 teams to make this college football playoff. Walk us through how you came to some of these decisions.
Yeah, I think right now Oregon and Georgia, to me, Jordan, passed the eye test as the 2 elites in college football. Clemson is my projected ACC champion over Miami. Miami, outside of that win over Florida State, the last month has had a lot of one-possession games. I don't think Miami is upset-proof the way Clemson is in that conference. BYU is my projected champ out of the Big 12. That's kind of a crapshoot with Iowa State. One of those 2 teams is going to win that league. And then I've got Texas, Ohio State, Miami, Penn State rounding out the top 8. Notre Dame's a team that I think finishes 11-1, probably going to beat Army here in a couple of weeks after disposing of Navy on Saturday. And then the last 3 teams in, Texas A&M, Indiana, and Boise State. Indiana's a team that if they finish 11-1, I think you're going to see the Hoosiers get one of those final at-large bids over a possible 10-win Bama, 10-win LSU, just because 11 wins means something.
I'm glad you brought that up, Brad, because let's talk about 11 wins meaning something, right? What happens if Washington State finishes 11-1? Are they G5? Are they Power 4? Are they just party of one? Also, Army Notre Dame. Question: if Army beats Notre Dame, is that an elimination game for Boise State? Because you have to kind of put Army in, and do you knock Notre Dame out of the postseason? And where does a 2-loss Ohio State fit into the mix if Indiana runs the table? And 1-loss BYU or 1-loss Iowa State, who goes into the Big 12 championship game undefeated, do you knock out one of those teams even though they may have 11 wins? And what if Pitt beats SMU and Clemson and loses to Miami in the ACC title game? Do you then knock out Clemson over Miami in that situation, that scenario? Let me know, Brad.
Man, that is a ton of chaos scenarios that I would love to see unfold as not only an analyst, but as a college football fan. I think Notre Dame has to win out and finish 11-1 to assure itself a playoff spot. I mean, 10 wins, considering the logjam at the top of the polls, not going to get it done. So Notre Dame has to win out.
Oh, well, it's college football. Anything can happen. We'll see if these predictions hit at the end of the season. All right, you guys, we have to hit a quick break. But before we do, just another look at your top 10 teams as the new AP Top 25 college football poll is out. As expected, nothing really changes at the top. However, you know, voters did value that win for Miami against FSU. They jumped Texas, who falls just one spot. Notre Dame makes its way back into the top 10 as well. BYU remains undefeated at 8-0 at 9. And Texas A&M, they could thank Marcel Reed for making them move up 4 spots, making the biggest jump into the top 10 with their win this weekend.